Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on virtual events. My name is Martin Klöver from Tripus, and I will be your guide here for the nearest 45 minutes or so. We still have a couple of people joining as we speak, so I'll start a little bit slowly, but I think to respect everybody's schedules, we will get moving fairly soon. So thank you so much for taking the time to join this session, where we'll share our findings from the last couple of months, where we have done our very best to help our clients shift from physical to virtual events instead of canceling them. We have certainly learned a lot during these past last special few weeks, but there is a lot more to be learned for sure. Therefore, we are very grateful if you would like to contribute with the questions, comments, experiences, etc. Please use the chat function in Zoom when doing so, and you can find it at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer questions as we speak today, but if there are questions that we don't have time to answer during this webinar, they will be answered afterwards, and all the answers will be emailed to you in the nearest couple of days. So, and we will send you a link to a page where we will group together all these things that we bring up on during this webinar and answers to the questions that come in. So, let's see here. Today's agenda. We will start by introducing Tripus, our company, and after that we will have a look at what a virtual event is and have a look at some examples of that. Then we will look at how virtual events impact the way that we communicate with our participants and how this changed the participant management process. Then we come to live streaming, and live streaming is a key factor in virtual events. This is about how we broadcast audio and video from speakers to attendees, and sometimes the other way around as well. Interaction, finally, is all about how we use digital tools to improve the communication between attendees and speakers and make sure to really activate our attendees to make the event a better experience for everybody. So first of all, Tripus. What is Tripus? Well, Tripus is the leading provider of event management systems in the Nordic countries, and we have been in this market for 20 years. The Tripus system takes care of the full process of an event. So first of all, sending out digital invitations by email, and then managing the registration or sign-up process, where attendees sign up to attend the event, book their sessions, and pay the associated fees. And as number 3, that we have handling what happens during the event with checking in at physical events, printing badges, interaction between speakers and attendees, and this is probably where the virtual events differ most from the physical ones. And then, of course, the follow-up afterwards, after the event. So that's the very brief introduction to Tripus. Some virtual events then. Well, here we have a good example. International Data Group, IDG, they organize Webdagarna Stockholm, or the Web Days, and they gather close to 2,000 participants every year when doing this. This year, this event was held on March 17th to 18th. Just after the restrictions for events were imposed. But instead of canceling, the organizers pivoted the event into a virtual conference in just a few days. And in their communication, they chose to focus on the advantages with virtual events. And what they said was, the past few years, we've filled every chair at the Stockholm Waterfront Conference Center. This year, when we go virtual, we can fit even more attendees. So they chose to focus on the positive things about this. But virtual events, they do not have to be huge. They don't have to be that super big. This spring, Coop Sweden has trusted us with their annual general meetings. This one was for their local association in the very north of the country. Just over 40 attendees, so not 2,000, but just 40 attendees checked in virtually and were put on the electoral roll for this annual general meeting. After that, their chairman guided them through the agenda, and they used Tripus interaction feature to vote on each agenda item. During this spring, we have done about 15 AGMs, both large and small, using the system to feature these meetings as well. Another very different type of virtual event is something that my friend John Chen in Seattle in the US invented. His quarantine karaoke contest has taken place every Saturday night for the past 2 months. People sign up for the events. They join by Zoom, just like you've done this morning, and they sing karaoke with each other for about 3 hours. It does not sound fantastic, I can tell you that, but it works, and people do have a lot of fun. And over to another one here, Brooks Running. I mean, they manufacture running shoes. They normally organize physical events in over 10 countries in Europe, where runners can take the latest Brooks shoe models on a test run. This spring, this has of course not been possible, so instead Brooks chose to run virtual campaigns where runners attend from the local running trail or from their own staircase even, depending on the country's restrictions. And in this case, well, after attending, each runner, they have received a virtual medal. Brooks has also involved the resellers in this to activate them. And now when shops all over Europe are opening up again, the runners can go to their local store to pick up a gift from, like a thank you for attending. And then if we go to the participant communication side of things, participant communication or participant management, if you will, are areas of great importance, no matter if the event is held physically or virtually. In both cases, we need to think carefully about how we design the invitation, the sign-up process, and the marketing to make our event offering as attractive and easy to access as possible. This example, this is the invitation to another AGM from the spring, where the organizers decided to rebrand the event to a more digital approach, if you will. And then after they've received the invitation, we come to the sign-up process, and the meeting content and the choices needed to be made when signing up are often very similar, no matter if the event is physical or if it takes place virtually. The more logistical tasks the more logistical tasks are different, though. I mean, hotel booking, food allergies, and these kind of things, they are typically not things you need to worry about for virtual events. Instead, you can put the full focus on meeting content, the different sessions available, and how to connect to these remotely. So we put together a little checklist to look at before the event. What do we need to have in mind? First of all, invitation and registration, they are just as important for virtual events. But take the opportunity to create an exciting impression. Maybe it's time to renew your photo bank a little bit, put on some other pictures on there to make the event look more interesting. It's also important to look at which technical platform will be used for streaming and things like that. How do people connect? Be sure that you really inform people about how this is supposed to be done. And you should also prepare your attendees for what is expected from them. Should they, appear with the microphone on, camera on, things like that, just to make sure that they are up for this. And you should also plan a rehearsal to prepare your speakers so that everybody has, the light, right light, good microphone, all those things should be working well. And sometimes, if you want to involve your participant as well, you can even do like a rehearsal for them. Let's say that you start the meeting 15 to 30 minutes before, where everybody can test their picture, test their audio, and so on. And what you can do here, you can do that through creating like a mingle session to make sure everybody can connect without problems, and make sure that it's possible to contact you there. So make sure that you're available for support questions all the way up to the event and even during the event, and make sure that people can use the channels that they are used to using. So for instance, sending emails and just calling you over the phone. Make sure that that is information that is very easy to find, and also that you make sure that you have people ready to answer those questions on very short notice. And then, as we always say, no matter if we're talking about physical events or virtual events, before you go live, make sure that you test, and then that you also test again to make sure that everything works and looks the way that it's supposed to. And make sure to involve colleagues in this testing, maybe even friends and so on that are external to your organization, just to make sure that everybody understands this in the same way as you do. Then we have a much higher probability to have a successful event. So when we go on site, or maybe should we say that on the day of the event rather, there are a few things that we should have in mind as well, of course. Many people have very limited experience with virtual events, so it's a good idea to really prepare them for what will come. This thing with cameras, microphones, do we want them to keep them on? Do we want them to speak as well? Or do we as organizers want to control this? These are things that we really need to think about carefully before, when planning the event. Or do we want them to communicate with us through the chat function, or do we want them to use our event app? These are things that we should also keep in mind and really communicate to our attendees in advance. So, but I mean, if we prepare our participants for what is expected from them, it's much more likely that our events will be successful. And let's go over to the live streaming. And this is, of course, a very important part of virtual events. And this with live streaming is about the broadcasting of video and sound to all attendees, no matter where they may be located. And there are a lot of low-cost tools for this that are easy to use, and every laptop, every tablet, they come with built-in cameras and microphones. So, I mean, who has not spent weeks in Zoom or Teams meetings from their kitchen table this spring? In some cases, these tools may be enough to fulfill our needs for our event, but it's definitely a good idea to evaluate some more professional options as well that are available. For a small additional cost, the participant experience can be enhanced significantly. What is the right level of admission then for a virtual event? Well, I would say that this depends. Do we want to enable all our attendees to speak at our event, or do we want to prevent them from doing so? Should everybody in the meeting be able to switch on their camera, or is this something that we as organizers want to control? It is interesting to know the difference between the two main types of technology that we can use when streaming virtual events. Video conferencing solutions are the same as we use when we have online meetings with our colleagues. And Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, and Zoom are some of the most popular solutions. Here we have a short delay from when the speaker speaks and the audience gets to hear it, almost like a phone call. And both speakers and audience can have their microphones and cameras on if you want to. And this type of technology is ideal for meetings for up to a few hundred participants. Zoom, for instance, supports up to 1,000. Webcast solutions are something else. Here, there are a lot of providers doing this very professionally with cameras, microphones, and video editing. But you can also stream your events for free via, for instance, YouTube or Facebook. With these solutions, the delay is much longer, though, from, I would say, 30 seconds and up. This means that when a speaker says something, it will take at least 30 seconds before the audience hears that. No problem if this is a one-way presentation, But if we want to interact with our audience, we really need to prepare our speakers when using a solution like this. When using webcasts, our participants won't be able to attend with cameras and microphones. They will need to interact through the chat or the event app. On the other hand, this technology works for events that are a lot bigger, several thousands if you want to. Another big thing here, I mean, one problem with the links to video conferences or webcasts is that everybody typically joins through the same link. This means that this link can be spread to people that we do not necessarily want to have present at our events. So the question is, how can we ensure that only registered or paid or approved attendees can join our live stream to avoid the so-called Zoom bombing that we've heard about? This is when unauthorized persons enter a virtual meeting just to sabotage. Well, in a few weeks' time, Tripus will launch an integration with Zoom that ensures that only participants registered in Tripus will be able to join the event. Each attendee will then get a personalized link that can only be used like once at a time. So then we can ensure that only the people that we really want in our event can actually join. So this is a very important security feature. So some other things for what happens on site here or when the event takes place. At a physical event, we scan participants in as they arrive to the venue or check them off on a list. We need to know who and how many are on site for several reasons. If we're hosting an annual meeting, we need this information from the system to be able to generate an electoral roll, for instance. When hosting a virtual event, we ask our participants to check in digitally in their event app instead. This shows that they are like virtually here. And since this is the first step in that participants take in Tripus at the virtual event, we recommend sending out this link well in advance, ideally like 30 to 60 minutes before the event begins. And just before this webinar started, you all received a link as a text message by SMS to your phones, to the phone number that you provided when you registered. And in that app that will open up, if you click on the link in the text message, you will see a virtual check-in button looking something like this. So if you click on that one, it will check you into the event. And if this would have been like an annual general meeting, this would mean that you would be able to vote after this, for instance, on the different points that we have on the agenda for that meeting. Interaction at events through tech tools is something that we have been talking about for several years now. And up till now, these features have mainly been used to enable attendees to interact with speakers and each other at physical events that are too large for raising hands and shouting out live to be viable options. An increasing number of events have given attendees the opportunity to ask questions to speakers and through their event app, and to let speakers do live polls with their audience and display results in real time. When we don't have our participants in the same room, this becomes even more important to create a personal atmosphere at our events. Interaction through event apps becomes very useful even at events with fewer participants. One of the most difficult things from the physical world to replace at virtual events are the informal chats that take place while mingling and refilling coffee and things like that. A way to partially replace these and to create more value for attendees is to facilitate one-to-one meetings where participants meet virtually in pairs during the event. So let's see, shall we go over to interaction? When you signed up, or just a few minutes before this event, you received this link to your event app. If you open up your event app now, reload it, you will have a button on top of that where it says that you can answer questions. So if you click on that, you will see some questions there regarding the events that you had or were supposed to have in the beginning of this year. So if we could just ask you to open up your phones, click on that event app, and go in and answer those questions. So what you do is you take up your phone, you click on the top button of the app, and here you can give your answer. Just send that in. So, and we're starting to get some answers in here. So I'm going to switch over to that view. So here we can see now that a few of you held your event as planned, physically or virtually. We have a majority now of people that actually canceled or postponed their events. And we also have some people here in the meeting that didn't have any events planned. So, that is good to know. Oh, we see that even more people are answering as we speak, and we see that it's a big majority now for those events that were canceled or postponed to another time. Okay, so let's see. You also answered the second question about what will happen with this the events planned for this autumn, and here we see that we have a bigger variety in the answers that have come in. So, some of these events will be run as usual, like on-site. Some are going to be held virtually or as hybrids, where hybrid would be events where people can choose if they want to attend on-site or join virtually. And we see that some have also been canceled. So this is interesting. A very interesting fact here is that we see that more and more events are actually going back to normal, but as well we see that just as many are going to be held virtually or as hybrids. So this is also what we have learned over the last I would say few weeks, that the hybrid or virtual as an option is something that is actually will actually grow in importance for the rest of this year. Thank you very much, everybody, for submitting the answers to these questions. It's very interesting to see how this will turn out. So what we will do now, I will go back to the presentation, and the next step here is a checklist that we put together for this. So the first thing we need to do about what happens on site is to decide on the level of ambition for the live streaming. You just want to use your regular Microsoft Teams account, or do we want to go for a more professional solution? What is right is actually up to you to decide, but feel free to share your thoughts with us, and we can maybe, if we can help in any way there. Should the event only be open for approved or registered or paid participants? Well, then it's a good idea to have a look at the integration that we will launch shortly with Zoom that secures that only approved people will be able to join. Have a dedicated person responsible for the live streaming. Even though this is something that is fairly easy in many of these tools, it's very good that the presenter doesn't have to do that. Today, for instance, I have a couple of colleagues with me here helping me out with these things so that I can focus on the presentation rather than on the technology to be able to stream the presentation. And do use the chat feature and appoint a person that is responsible for responding to questions that come in, or bring them to the speaker. We can see now during this webinar we have received a few questions over the chat, and we try to answer them as the meeting goes. And afterwards we will also sort of collect these questions and put down answers to them and send the results over to you. But make sure that you have someone who is following what's happening on the chat, because if you have it activated, you should be able to be responsive there as well in that channel. And make sure to activate your participants through interaction, questions, polls, contests, these kind of things. This is something that becomes more important when we do not have our participants in the same room, just to keep a live feeling to the event. And are you planning to host any seminars or breakout sessions? Here we actually have two different options. We can either invite people to these breakout rooms as separate virtual meetings technically, or we can bring everybody into the same room and actually create within Zoom, for instance, create breakout rooms there. We actually did the other week. We had a meeting together with a client that we hosted that used this feature with the breakout rooms. And my colleague Rickard, who I have here today, actually was on site preparing this. And Rickard, what was your what did you learn from this this event?
Yeah, Zoom has a very good feature where you can put attendees in different breakout sessions, and basically you can have Zoom doing all the work for you. So Zoom divide the people to different rooms, or you can, as admin or host, decide who's going where. And the best thing about this is if you have a relatively small meeting, this is very, very handy because you can move people around. You don't have to send different links to each and every one for the different parts of the meeting. So if you have I would say a quite small meeting where you want to decide who's going where, that's the best way to use this breakout session rooms. But if you have a bigger meeting and you make Zoom do all the work for you, that works as well. And as a host, you can jump between the rooms or the breakout rooms to be able to follow the discussion in the different rooms.
Oh, that's great. What would you say? I mean, if you would have a small meeting of maybe 50 or so people, then I guess this feature is a very good option.
Absolutely, yeah. You need what to think about is to have a technical break where you put the right people in the right breakout sessions, and also what you need to think about is to send before so everyone puts their real name at the Zoom meeting, so you know who's who.
That's right, yeah. But if we would have, let's say, conference with about 500 people, would you say that this is a good option then?
It depends. I would say probably not. Actually, if you make Zoom do all the work and they will be divided by Zoom and just have some small group discussions, well, yeah, but not if you're gonna really place each participant where you want them to be.
That's good. That's great. Great input for this. So I mean, for smaller meetings, the breakout room function in Zoom is a great thing. But if you have larger conferences, then we would probably recommend you to use separate Zoom meetings for these different breakout sessions.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Rickard. We have now come to the part where we follow up after the event, and the main sort of the main takeaway from this is that you should do the follow-up with your participants as soon as possible after the event. And here we really recommend you to use the event app and email. And the thing is, I mean, if you use the event app, you're able to reach your attendees directly when the event ends. So when the ambition, or when the sort of the focus is still on the event and the content of the meeting, so you can get like instant responses and a high response rate. And afterward, and make sure that you collect the questions that come up during the event, that come in through the chat or through the event app, and then publish these questions with answers as soon as possible after the event ends. And also, do not forget to publish your contact details so that people know how to get in touch with you after the event. This is something that can improve your business afterwards as well. So this was actually the last slide of the presentation. So do we have any questions that have come in through the chat so far? Otherwise, feel free to write any questions that you might have in the chat.
Yeah, we have some questions actually. So one is it possible to set up an external camera for the speaker with Zoom to make it feel more real? And this is actually what we're doing right now, but the camera is placed so it looks like a webcam, but you can have it more further away or on another site, or you can even have professional cameras connected to Zoom.
Yeah, so actually, at the moment, I'm getting filmed right now by an external camera, while Rickard is using the built-in camera in his laptop, just to show you some different options that we have. The good thing here is that I can, for instance, zoom in, zoom out, and I can zoom in another person if I would like to do that as well.
Another question is, do we have any tips for hybrid meetings? Where to place the camera, and what if they're gonna record something before the event?
Yeah, but what I think there is one good thing, especially if you have a lot of people attending in person, physically, then it can be really good to place the camera so that you actually get a feeling that you're one in the crowd, even though you're attending from home. So make sure that not only the speaker is visible, or maybe you have one camera on the speaker and one camera on the audience. Otherwise, have the camera a little bit back in the room so that you see that you're one in the crowd, and so that you see that you're not alone. But that makes you feel more, can you say, like included in the meeting maybe?
Yeah, I'm reading through all the questions. Yeah, so there was another one with the hybrid meeting where some are attending and some are attending online. But also we have a question about multi-language sessions and how to use them. And one answer to that is that you can have, for example, those breakout rooms where we have the same meeting but in different languages at the same time, and maybe the main session is on English maybe, but you can have breakout sessions where you have different languages for certain parts.
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Is there anything else we should bring up here?
Let's see. Yeah, we talked about where to place the camera on a hybrid meeting, but we also received a question about how to combine a physical meeting and web meeting. So some are on site and some are online. And basically, I think the only thing that you need to know is in the registration who's going to be on site and who's going to attend online. So you can send the link to the attendees attending online, and for the other guys, or yeah, just do as usual, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. As we talked about in the beginning of this webinar, the invitation and the registration processes, they are just as important for when an event is taking place virtually as it is when it's physical. So, but the thing is there that we sort of make sure that we know who is going to attend on site and who is going to attend online, and then we can make sure to ask them different questions. So, for instance, that people that are attending on site, there it might be more interesting to ask them if they have any food allergies, so we know if we need to bring in especially cookies for the coffee, for instance, or if they are attending lunch, dinner, and these kind of things. While we do not need to ask these questions to people that are attending online. So this is just something that you can easily design in the sign-up process to make sure that you make this a good, the best possible experience for both categories. But for sure, and this is something that we saw way before we had the situation that we're in right now, that we had some clients that wanted people to be able to attend virtually as well, just because they didn't have the time to travel or things like that. And then we typically had just a handful of people that attended virtually, and the vast majority of the participants, they were actually on site. What we're starting to see now is, I would say it starts like the other way around, that even at those virtual events that we've been helping our clients to organize this spring, you have typically had a handful of people on site instead, but the majority of the participants have been attending virtually. So this is something that you need to take into account, I would say, all the time, really. And something that we are pretty clear about, that, I mean, from what we are hearing from our clients, is that even when we are back to some sort of a normal state again, we will still see a lot of hybrid events for sure, because I think people find, working like in a virtual environment like this is something that works out fairly well for most people. And so many more people have discovered this now. And to be able to make your event a good experience for people, no matter if they're on site or online, is something that will definitely be key in the future.
Yes, so we have two more questions.
Yeah.
Are you using Zoom only, or can you use other solutions?
Yeah, and in this case, we have decided to use Zoom, but we actually have, we are platform independent in that sense. So if you're using Tripus, you can just as well use GoToMeeting, you can use Microsoft Teams, or any other platform that you may prefer. We have experience from using all of these different platforms, and we have both been doing like video conferences like this, but also webcasts that we talked about earlier, where you have the longer delay, but you can also have a lot of more people.
Yeah, and the next question is, do you have any good way to make sure that people online can raise their hands or come with input during a hybrid meeting?
Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, these video platforms that we're looking at now, where you can use the chat or the raise your hand function to do so. So that's a good option. You can also use your event app if you want to activate people to be able to do so. You can have them ask questions through the event app. We can do it through the voting that we looked at earlier, and so on. So there are a few good options there, definitely, to do so. All right, I see that we are sort of running out of time. Or do we have any last questions that we can bring up?
Yeah, we can take one last, and that question is about what type of camera, microphone, etc. do make the web part professional without using a company who's very expensive? And yeah, Martin.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I would say that with just using like a regular conference camera, you sort of, the level, you raise the level to a completely different level than if you're just using the video and audio from your, for instance, a laptop or a tablet. But you don't need to invest thousands of euros in these kind of equipment. There are lots of options out there that are a lot less than that. But what I would say is that make sure that you know how to do this as well, and make sure that it's very important where you put the camera, where you put the microphone, and these kind of things. So don't make sure that you really think about that, and feel free to reach out to us to ask us if you want to know our take on that and what we have learned during the spring. Because I mean, we've been helping our clients organizing a lot of virtual meetings in the past few months, and we know a lot more now than we did just 2 months ago. So I think we are more or less through our program for today. Or do we have anything else we want to add?
No, I mean, the question about camera and so on, and which service to have. We are actually offering that you can lend or hire one camera, and also we take care of all the technical with Zoom, for example, and all the registration part as well. So you can use our stuff as well. So you don't need to buy those very expensive stuff or so on.
Definitely, and as always, the equipment is one thing and the know-how is something else. And those of you that have been working with us before know that we are happy to go on site or to the events that are taking place. And this is something that we do for virtual events as well, even though we can, of course, attend virtually then too. And just like we do with checking in, badge printing, interaction at physical events, we can help you with the same things and also with the live streaming when it comes to virtual events. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any events that you're planning right now and want to hear what we think about that and see if we can help you in any way. That would be great. And we are actually sort of running out of time here, so I would really like to thank you everybody for attending this webinar this morning. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you might have. If you already have a contact person at Tripus, reach out there. Otherwise, you can just send your emails and inquiries to the email address sales@tripus.com. Thank you very much once again, and have a fantastic day, everybody.